All right. I was just sitting here watching Neil deGrasse Tyson, okay? And anyone who's actually listened to any of my lectures, okay, you can see a common reference between the two of us in some way, shape, or form as far as how we articulate our thoughts into a story of some aspects, okay? But there's a lot of times when he says things that I disagree with, okay? All right, and it's all because his life is a hell of a lot different than my life, okay? And he would agree that time is relevant to one's perspective, okay? As I would agree, but at the same time, he just said something very interesting, okay, which made me think of a discussion that we're going to have right now. And that is, you don't go to college to say, this is a job I want to do. You go to college to be a thinker, okay? And let me tell you, that is not my life experience. No way, shape, or form. But there is some truth to it, but, okay, not at the level that he's talking about. Now, his theory is going to college makes you a thinker, okay? Now, let's go back to first grade or kindergarten, okay? All right? From kindergarten to high school, okay? We are talking about 8 years, 9, 10, 11, 12, 12 years of us going to school every day for 6 hours a day. Okay? All right? Which, when we're done there, 9 times out of 10, either we go to college, okay, in our 20s, mid 20s, okay, or our early 20s before we're done, or we actually go to work, okay, and then we spend 8 hours a day at work. Okay, so what would be the opposite if we didn't learn? Okay, now in my school days, okay, and this is no joke, okay, from first to 8th grade, okay, all right, in the beginning of my first, second, third, and fourth grade, okay, I got straight A's. Okay, because, I mean, you're in first grade. How can you fail first grade, right? Okay, but, 5th grade and up, I got straight F's. Okay, so, now, every year I failed, but I was passed anyway, okay? All right, and you got to understand there's a reason for that, which we're not going to go into that, but there was a lot of emotional stuff that I was going through as a child at that particular school that made me not care to learn a thing or care about anything. Okay? Now, when I left that school and went to another school, as in high school, okay, how can someone have straight F's every year, okay, labeled the dumbest idiot on the planet, okay, all right, yet the first year of high school get 100% on every exam, every test, pop quiz, homework across the board, okay? And even pulled aside after class so the teacher could say, I've never seen anything like this in my entire life, okay? Hundreds across the board, okay? There was nothing I ever got wrong. All right? And in fact, showing the work, okay, that was one of the biggest problems. And I still got a C in that class because I refused to do the journal. Okay? You got to understand with someone like me, how can you learn math at that level without doing any of the math work for years prior? Okay? All right? How is that possible? Because in school, you might not do the homework. You might not take the test. Okay? And I'm going to tell you, All right. Most of my tests, I never even turned them in. I wouldn't even put my name on the paper. Okay. I never did homework. I never did assignments until I got to high school. Okay. Now, here's another thing. Math and science were my subjects. Okay. I never took science because I was always focused on math. All right. English, horrible. History, I didn't care about. I slept through history. Okay. Because I just didn't care. So, you gotta understand, I only focused on things that I cared about, that had a purpose, and what I desired to learn, and took that to the level that I wanted to take it to. Even as a kid, I was like this. Okay? Alright? Now, being able to do this, meaning that I dictated what I was going to do throughout my childhood and through my school years. Okay? My math, the reason why I was so good at it, because I would do the whole math book in a week's time, and I would get points off because I already had my entire notebook, like 5 subject notebook, filled on the math section because I went through the entire book and learned the lessons on my own because it was really entertaining. Okay, so before this semester ever begun, okay, I had the entire book done. So when the teacher would say do odds, do all the odd assignments, I mean, I would turn in the entire thing with all of them done, okay, and I would lose points in that aspect as well. So you get 100% across the board, an A student, and get a C in the class, okay. All right, I didn't care about the grade. What I cared about was the knowledge, okay? And that's the way I've always been. So, I'm going to work, okay? And here's the thing. I'm learning something that I want to learn. And you got to understand, everything in my life is never something that I just fell into. It was something that I wanted to do, and I would go after it, okay? I set my direction. The same thing I did in school. Okay? Alright? College, the same way. If I felt that the college that I was dealing with wasn't relevant to my destination, okay, it's time to leave that school alone and move on to something else. Okay? Now, you would think that this is something a kid wouldn't do, but I was very adamant about this. Okay? So, all right. My knowledge of geographical locations and the earth and, where China is on the globe, I couldn't tell you. I couldn't tell you the date, okay, of Independence Day. I couldn't tell you the date of when the Declarations of Independence were signed. Okay? Because history had no relevance to me. And still today it doesn't. It has no relevance. Okay? Now, today, okay, I would look at history from an aspect, okay, because I'm going to tell you right now, I'm going to watch a YouTube video, and the worst thing that could ever happen is here's the subject we're talking about, and now you got to go back in history, okay? So first, let's talk about a little history here, okay? And everybody does this, and dude, you have already closed my interest on a subject. I'm going to another video, okay? All right? I did not ask for a history lesson. Your history, even if I would watch the video, is irrelevant, okay, to the information that I was looking for in that video, okay? But this is what people do. And you'll realize that people are nothing more than sheep. All their videos are the same, okay, which makes none of them really special. Because nobody's doing their own thing. They're just copying everybody else. All right? So, now, what we're going to talk about is the concept of certifications versus degrees and why these two should be chosen. Okay? Now, the first time I went to college was community college. Okay, and it just was not beneficial to anything that I was doing. Okay. However, the second time I went to college was computer learning center. Okay, that had a purpose, and that purpose was learning things like Visual Basics, C++, which I never got that far, by the way. Okay, all right, Visual Basics, C++, Visual Basics I still use today, guys. Okay, I wasn't even 20 years old when I actually signed up for Computer Learning Center. All right, okay, and still today I use Visual Basics. Okay, I can still use that application program to build applications in Visual Basics, but I use a lot of Visual Basic coding for VB scripts, okay, in Excel, or creating applications for me to do my job, okay, like clicking on buttons to bring up pop-up windows to ask me questions to build configurations, okay, do that. Guys, I can do that all day. All right, now that had a purpose. Okay, all right. Next time I went was ITT. Okay, that had a purpose. All right, and that purpose, believe it or not, is for me to have some type of education, something being done and moving in a positive direction as I decided what career path I wanted to take. Microsoft, databasing, um, Cisco, or software development. Okay, and that had a purpose. Once I decided what I was going to do, that school no longer had a purpose. Okay, all right. Now, so I'm juggling now. Which one do I take? Okay, look here. When I was doing heating and air conditioning, okay, I wanted to develop my skills. So when I'm not working, what am I doing? I'm reading a big ass, thick ass HVAC refrigeration book, okay, learning the basics of theory, okay, all right, learning theory and learning applications. And this is what I'm doing in my spare time, okay. So, when I do take general classes in a college, okay, here's the thing. All right, I go to class, I do my work in class, okay. However, the homework is more than just homework. It's not about just finishing the work and being done. It's what I do at home in my spare time that puts me on a level that I want to be in that particular subject, okay. Perfect example. I'm taking a creative writing class. I have no interest in this class whatsoever. Okay? However, the lessons that are being learned about creative writing and how to be more detailed in your writing still shows today because of the extra time that I would take on writing things about simple things like a description of a pen that I was using. Okay? Or a decorative pen, and I would literally use descriptive words and in detail to describe that pen. Okay? All right, and then I would send it to my teacher, which was not the assignment. Okay? Not the assignment at all. I'm sitting in a cabling class, okay, a basic network, and we're teaching how to do, we're learning how to do Cat5 cables and crimping and stuff like that, and the assignment was to draw out this, your cabling design, okay, and draw it out. And everybody would just take this circle and just draw lines to every room, okay? Horrible, okay? The extra, I swear to God, the time that it took me to do this, okay, to go into Visio, give every wall jack a number, okay, bringing it back to a patch panel, okay, trying to find the actual diagrams in Visio to use this. And it was so large that I actually used their plotter at the actual school to print it out, okay? And it was humongous. It literally almost covered the entire a whiteboard. Okay, the thing is this: it is your responsibility to take it to a level that you want it to be. I didn't have to do all that. I could have drew the lines on the paper with just pencil like everybody else did and got an A. But it wasn't about that. Okay? Why? Why would I go to that level? Because this was a skill that I needed as a network engineer. I was on a mission. Okay? All right? And still today, that learning that, okay, and when I'm talking about it took me forever. It took, guys, the time I spent on that diagram was insane. I knew nothing of Visio at that level, and still today, the skills that I learned doing that and taking it to that level, I actually utilize those skills still today. Okay, 15 years later. All right, because remember, all right, this was before this was actually when I was a CCNA and was just starting CCNP around that time. Okay, which was 2010, I believe. All right, now, and I hadn't even gotten into routing yet. I had on a CCNP level. I was still doing switching. So now, here's the thing. Another thing. Okay, so here's another thing. All right, when I went to Computer Learning Center, okay, Visual Basics was one of the classes, but another one was Cobalt. Okay, and I'm going to tell you, all right, the time and effort I put in Cobalt when I was at home was astronomical. And I'm telling you, the only thing that I could not understand, and still today will never understand, was JCL. Okay, I could not understand the relationship of JCL to the Cobalt, but the Cobalt programming was off the chart. Okay, all right, and Cobalt is not an easy language to code. Okay, this is a class I had no interest in, but I wanted to learn more about coding. Okay, so that's why I excelled so much with Visual Basics. Okay, now I never got to C++, which you know I wish I had at some point, but still, that's not my field that I'm in anymore. Okay, so here's the reality. Certifications have their place. College degrees have their place. If you are going to a 4-year college, okay, and you don't have a destination in mind on why you're taking the classes or your major, there is something wrong. Okay? I can't sit there and tell you to go to a 4-year college to become a better thinker. That's why we went to grade school and elementary school, grade school, and high school. Okay? All right? And those who went to college for a 4-year degree. All right? That time as a child is what develops you as a thinker, as an adult. Because as a child, you're not going to go home and make that extra effort because you're not on a mission yet in life. Okay? Now, even in high school, I couldn't wait until high school was over, and I left at 10th grade. I never even finished high school. Okay? But promised my mom I would get my GED, and I did. Okay? All right? To close that chapter of my life. And I'm going to tell you, there have been tons of times that I would have lost a job and had not gotten that job without having finished my high school education. So it served a purpose. So is your college degree going to serve a purpose? Okay, and if it's money, guys, I'm telling you, you're wasting your time. Okay, you're going to no destination. Okay, all right. College does have a purpose. Now, from Neil deGrasse's point of view, he is accurate on the aspect that it will make you a better thinker because of the vast subjects that you cover, okay, and having to create things that you have no idea about or care about, all right, just to pass the course gives you the concept of thinking outside the box to get this task done, okay? So that is a byproduct regardless. However, that's not the reason why I go to college, okay? All right, I go to college for the information that I'm looking for, All right, and it serves a destination purpose. Okay, so if you want to be a network engineer, okay, and you want a college degree, find a college that is going to take you down the networking path. And they're out there. I don't care if it's online or if it's in a physical school, okay? All right? And it's not just communication. All right? Find the courses that are going to teach you how to configure routers, how to actually do cabling, how to do all these things, okay? Now, I have no interest in learning cables. There's cable guys for that, okay? But I know my destination, okay? So, if you're confused of your destination, now you don't have a destination, you don't have a mission, you don't have a purpose. Now, Neil deGrasse, or how you pronounce his name, his point has tons of validity. Okay? And I mean tons. Because the fact that you don't have a direction, you're at least learning new things. Your mind is being exercised. You are learning how to be a better thinker over a period of time. Okay? And there's nothing wrong with that. You get your degree, okay, and now you're sitting there scratching your head saying, hey, I majored in physics, but, I'm a car mechanic. Okay, all right, that part's fine. So now, with your degree, add some certifications that certify you as a mechanic in your field, giving you a different destination. You now have a mission. Okay? There's nothing wrong with going to a 4-year college with no direction because you don't know what you want to do. That's where Neil deGrasse's point of being a better thinker is valid across the board. Okay? However, never in my life have I had a career or a job that I did not go after. There's nothing in my life that I just fell into. Okay? All right? That includes me being an electrician, heating and air conditioning, construction, even fencing and carpet laying. And even when I worked for the golf course, I wanted to be work. I wanted to learn about the golf course grass and how to maintain a golf course. I went after that. I was 16 years old. Okay, I went after that job. My mission was to never work in fast food ever again in my life, and I never had. Okay, all right. And now my career of networking, 15 years in the making. Okay, now my next certification has a mission of destination. Okay, all right. There's a purpose. All right. Would I ever go to college? Absolutely. Okay, I absolutely would if it had validity. Okay, maybe it's just something I want to check off my list one day. Okay, all right. But let me tell you, 2 years of my life going for my CCIE security isn't something to shake a stick at. Okay, so but you gotta understand, it doesn't mean certifications are better than a 4-year degree. Okay, this is your decision, your choice in life. Okay, so it needs to fit your career and your destination and your mission. Okay, don't just go to college because someone said I'm going to college. Don't dismiss college because you believe, because someone told you certifications is the way to go. Okay, because there are going to be people that tell you certifications, okay, don't mean shit. All right, and these are the people that have never, ever put the time in or the work in to get certified in anything. Okay, and they'll be the ones that downplay certifications. Okay, these are the people, okay, you'll find that you really have nothing in common with. Okay, all right, and every time you get a new certification, not only do they downplay it, they stick their nose up, okay, all right, and then say how unfair it is for you to be chosen for a job that they tried to get and was denied. Okay, it had nothing to do with the fact of the certification. It was the skill set and the knowledge behind of what you had learned from getting that certification. Okay, because every time you failed, you went back until you succeeded to get that certification. That certification had a purpose, had a meaning to your career. Okay, and not to mention the fact, not only did you get the certification, but you got the knowledge to back it up. Okay, something that person who downplays the certification, and I'm telling you, there are a lot of them. Okay, all right. After a while, it becomes a dead space in your ear. You don't, because you already know what the power of being certified is. Okay, all right. Go and get a computer science degree. Okay, and you're going to learn things that you never even considered to be doing in your career. But that's where the thinking aspect comes into play. Okay, you're thinking about cryptos. Okay, in a way where you're writing your own cryptology. I don't know if I'm saying that right. Okay, to pass your exam, and this is not something you ever will do in your career. But that's where the thinking aspect comes into play. Okay, so they have their place. All right, there is not one better than the other. Okay, there is none. All right. You can get in the networking field by going to college. You can also do it by certifications. Now, if you're going to ask me the best way to get into it, okay, I'm going to tell you, well, here's the reality. All right? If you want to get into Microsoft, okay, I'm not going to recommend getting Microsoft certified because there's a lot of things. Now, again, this is my experience with it. Okay, as I was going for my MCSE at one point, I hope I said that right, by the way. There were so many MCSEs that came into my field when I was in IT and never even lasted a month. Guys, these guys were like a revolving door because their solutions were not adequate for the position that they were in. Okay? All right, you can't just go to a company and just say, we need new domain controllers. Okay, this is money. Okay, you have to have real justification for that. Okay, and this was what was happening. And keep in mind, guys, this is decades prior. All right, this is back in the 90s. So I have no idea what the level of certifications on a Microsoft level is today. Okay, but as a Cisco aspect, I would tell you to start off learning the basics with CCNA and get your CCNP. Okay, now, my opinion of the criteria for CCNA, CCNP is really, really not good. Okay, back in my day when I was taking it, it was really good. Okay, the way I see Cisco changing the training aspects, okay, I don't see you creating better CCNAs and better CCNPs with the method they're using. But that's my opinion. Okay? And even that, I would not utilize their method. Okay? Meaning that we got two aspects that I would be doing. Using the blueprint for a CCNP, but doing my own CCNP training on top of that. Making my learning of that skill set double in time.